So it's probably worth explaining kind of what NextScript is to start off with.
Right, sure.
So everything that you will be able to do with NextScript, you can already do right now on Nexa. So Nexa already has smart contracts. You have to use a language called script, and it's very low level, meaning that you have to kind of program with the kind of base level functions of the system. And I actually quite like developing contracts with it now because I now understand it fairly well. But if you have not programmed with something like that before, it is very, very different to say something like JavaScript. So what the goal of NextScript is to provide a language that's much, much more like JavaScript, and then that will compile, i.e. like it will kind of compress down into a contract that's written in script, and then it will provide a software development kit so that you can access those contracts, interact with those contracts. So at first, it will just kind of contain the basics. So it won't. You will still be able to do more with like knowing how to write script directly.
Right.
But over time, we'll kind of continually add more features so that you can start doing more and more complex things. But yeah, the first version should come out actually pretty soon. I'm nearly done with it now. And then once that's out, I think it'll be quite quick that we'll release newer versions to start doing some pretty cool stuff. So one of the things I'm personally most excited about is something I wrote about recently, these masked contract paths, where you can implement basically kind of infinitely complex contracts. They're basically multi-UTXO contracts on Nexa, and you'll be able to write that into this NextScript language in a way that's like much easier to read. If you try to do it, you can do it right now, of course, but if you try to do it now, it would be very difficult to do so. Like it would be conceptually hard to put everything together. Whereas when it's available in NextScript, it will be much easier to do. So that for me, that's personally like what's going to be particularly exciting about a future, not too distant future version of NextScript. And then on the tokenized side of things, to explain like a high level, what this does is it makes it much easier for developers to come and build applications that interact with the Nexa blockchain. And the easier it is, the more likely people are to come and build on it. If it's difficult, then it will cost companies more money to pay developers to come in and try and understand what's going on, understand script, and get building on it. It'll be much more difficult to find bugs in the contracts and things like this. So it lowers the barriers to entry of building on Nexa. And kind of similarly to that, tokenize. The goal with that is to make it very easy to just launch tokens with various attributes, I guess, without having to write your own software to do so. It's just like a visual user interface that anyone can use. Really, you won't need to be a programmer to launch tokens on Nexa once this exists. So it's just reducing the barriers to actually start using tokens on Nexa. And we were discussing this earlier. Even for us, is going to be useful because we can start like using tokens for rewards in the community, or for like voting in the community, or all sorts of different stuff, without having to basically pay for developer time to implement those functions. We can just ourselves open the app, launch some new tokens, and start using them however we want to.
Right. I think it's a perfect way to expand the ecosystem, right? Like if anything, the projects that are gonna launch on Nexa are like the sort of the free marketing that we can gather from the outside of ourselves and our community, and I think this will drastically help improve that overall. But Paul, when we're speaking about NextScript to get developers to use it, like what are we going to do to get these developers to make use of NextScript? Is there any plan? What do we have in mind?
I think that's more of a question for you, Martin, to be honest. Yeah, I think, I mean, straight away at top level, we'll start using it. So I think we'll try and get the, the HODL Vault contract in there straight away. So that'll be like a nice first example use case that's like already deployed on the network. Yeah, so there's multiple different contracts that I'm also personally working on that I think will be useful, including like a quite a complex multi-UTXO DAO contract, which we hope to put that into like an actual software product later in the year.
Right.
So, I guess from my perspective, a top level will kind of lead by example. I'm sure others will start doing the same. And then once people can kind of see, okay, well, actually, it's like this is how this works, and it's fairly easy to understand and implement, then more people will kind of start dipping their toes in and giving it a try, really. But obviously, I think a large part of this is going to be marketing and being like, look,
obviously,
guys, got this here. We've got documentation for it. We've got these examples already working out there. Come give it a try.
Right. Obviously, but what I was specifically hinting on with this question was more because you're working on the developer documentation, right?
Oh yeah, sure. But that's a different.
You could tell a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So NextScript will have its own documentation, so it will be on a website, a separate website. But one of the things that I'm working on separately from those other projects is, a set of developer documentation that kind of, I guess, at any level, from like a high level, just you want to understand kind of roughly how Nexa works. You're maybe not even a developer, you're just a user and are interested in the technology, all the way down to you want to start developing complex contracts that you write directly in script, for example. This documentation should provide, whatever info you need all the way through that. We do have documentation like spec. We have a spec.nexa.org, and there's a bit of stuff on just directly on nexa.org. But I think we can improve things there, especially in terms of trying to make the ideas a bit more digestible. I mean, the spec is obviously literally like a specification for the technology, which is good. Like if you want to understand like in kind of detail, but if you need to understand, at least to begin with, from like a high level and kind of work your way down into the nitty gritty of how it works, I think it will be useful to have like some nice visual graphics that explain the concepts. And I've been working on some animations, for example, that will help understand how the virtual machine works, with the various stacks and opcodes, just so that, again, like it's trying to reduce the barriers to entry so that developers can come on boards, look through this documentation and more quickly kind of get to grips with how things work. Because one of the problems that the challenges we kind of need to overcome is that, probably more than 95% of developers right now are developing for EVM chains, and most of them work in a very kind of similar way. So we've got to overcome that barrier of learning something new, because unless we come up with some very, very interesting way of compiling contracts, I don't think there will ever be solidity on Nexa. I don't think it's going to be possible. So even if we get close, it's going to be a much more advanced version of NextScript that developers will have to learn. So it's important that they have easy access to good explanations of everything that's kind of easy to digest, really. So that's the kind of goal with that project.
Right. That was what I tried to get out of you. I mean, obviously, apart from the marketing side of things to promote the easiness of building on top of Nexa, I think the key matter here is to have everything documented on such an easy way that there is barely like a bridge to overcome to literally build on Nexa, right? And I think these things that you're working on right now, that these are like a massive catalyst for guys like me to actually promote the the whole utility that we have to new developers and make them join on Nexa.
Right, absolutely. Like I would actually kind of give a shout out to another website that actually has nothing to do with Nexa, but is kind of inspiration for me on this project, which is called learnmeabitcoin.com. And it was actually what I used mostly to really understand how Bitcoin works, like down at like a kind of fundamental level. How transactions are put together, how the signatures work, how script works, and stuff like that. Now, while Nexa is not the same as Bitcoin, there's obviously quite a few similarities there. This website has like nice little graphics, even some little animations. And while I wouldn't say they're pretty, which kind of annoys me as someone who is very much into graphic design, they are very good at communicating the concepts. So my hope is with this documentation that we have something that looks really nice, but also, it communicates the concepts so that people can understand them much more quickly. That's a bit of the background of that.
Right. Awesome. Okay, cool. Hi, Paul. We were running a little bit out of time. Just as last week, just wanted to ask you the question: do you have anything to say to the community, to share, or whatsoever? Last word is for you.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. I think we're doing very, very well so far. Like, I think some people are going to be kind of disappointed in, let's say, the price performance if you take like the peak to now. But I don't think that this is like you can't just look at that. And if you invest in a project long term, you have to look at what's actually being built. And
right.
while we have to do a lot of this work up front, which takes time and quite a lot of resources to rebuild all these things, or just build these things for the first time that no other project has, it's all laying the foundation for when, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, we have all these things in place and projects are building on the network, and we don't have what happened on Ethereum or on Bitcoin, right? Like you have to kind of understand where Nexa came from, and that is from what, in my personal opinion, and I know this is a shared opinion by other people, in BU and other people in general, is that it kind of is born from the ashes of what we consider to be the failure of Bitcoin, and actually kind of the failure of Ethereum, which is that the network cannot handle growth. It has hit a limit. And once you do that, it just pushes everything off onto another network, another cryptocurrency, which then says, okay, well, we can try and scale, and then that hits a limit, and then it goes to another chain. And each time it does this, it fractures the community. The projects that have put enormous amount of resources and effort into building, let's say a financial service, which works when a transaction costs, let's say 50 cents or $1 or something. If the fees go up to $10, as an example, those financial services are unviable. They do not work, right? And so then all of these services have to think about, okay, how do we work around this? We have to improve our efficiency, or we have to then go to like another layer. All of this just halts the growth of cryptocurrency as a useful technology around the world. And so
Right.
the significant amount of work we're doing right now is so that once we do get to that point, this does not happen. The network just simply keeps on growing without any kind of hindrance to the capacity or usage of the network. This is why we've set this goal of 100,000 transactions per second. It's not just kind of picked from thin air. This is roughly what it would take to have a global network, that everyone uses. And probably more than that. Like we hope to get much more than 100,000 transactions per second as technology improves over time. As processors get more efficient, as processors get smaller and more powerful, and then this should also scale with that. But we really don't want to be in the same position again that we've been in with Bitcoin and Ethereum and other networks, where we start to get exponential growth and it just hits the ceiling, because that just knocks crypto back another number of years. So we're really building the network to be something that can last, not the next 5 years, but the next 100 years, 200 years, whatever it takes to make it useful for everyone.
I think long-term sustainability, that's the right keyword in this. And obviously, like I totally agree with what you said, Paul. And some people, they are like pretty eager to see everything roll out by the next week or the week after, if it's possible. But I mean, there are a ton of layer one networks around that have been building for years and are still in development stage, right? And I think if you look at where Nexa is right now, we are like a bit over 1 year of age, let's say. I'm pretty confident that, let's say, within the next 6 months to a year, that like 9 out of 10 of our real important use cases slash like networks scalability, stability, and all stuff like that will be already on the network, and we actually can literally grow to that big tire type of project where like 100 of different projects are building on without having the network congested or having to pay high fees like what we see in Ethereum during a bull run, and even during a bear market right now. So I think you can go from 0 to 100 real quick, but obviously it's best to grow gradually and improve the network where you can on the way, and implement all these things without rushing to implement them.
Yeah, exactly. And like the lessons that we have learned have been very, very painful lessons. Like there's a reason why the argument on Bitcoin kind of went over the space of years, and people, dedicated thousands and thousands of hours to just trying to convince people to scale it and provide the technologies for scaling. And why people were so upset that it didn't is because people have been involved for a long time had this expectation that it would grow, and that never happened. So that's why we're so invested in making sure that actually does happen on Nexa now.
Right. Okay, Paul, cool. Yeah, so everybody, this was the second episode of Know the Team. I want to thank you everybody for joining, and hope you appreciated it. That you learned some insight about Paul's thinking on whole crypto and Nexa in general. Paul, thank you also for taking your time to have a chat with me, with the community, to speak about the things, and hope to see you all back next week when we have Andrew Clifford on meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Martin, and thanks everyone for listening along.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day ahead.
Take care, everyone.